Turn to 2 Samuel chapter 13. We're at the very end of it. And by the way, this is Mark Stinson. I guess everybody remembers Mark from a while back. He's been here before. So, good to have you, Mark. So we're in 2 Samuel chapter 13, the very end, where Absalom has slain his brother, his half-brother, Amnon. And where we are in the story is the news is going to come back to David, and, well, it's kind of fake news. Because it's rather inaccurate.
So that's where it started.
So really not much has changed.
So fake news came from the devil back in verse 2.
Yeah, and I will be honest with you all, what we have to go into next, into chapter 14, is a big chunk of a story that is related to this incident here. And it's a lot to get your head around just to read through it, much less try to understand really what's going on. I'm not even sure how to present it because it's so convoluted. But we'll just do the best we can. So anyway, so Absalom, verse 34, chapter 13, verse 34. But Absalom fled. Oh, I need to back up because we were talking about this story. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's just review back to verse 28. Now Absalom had commanded his servants, saying, "Mark ye now when Amnon's heart," this is his stepbrother, or half-brother, I'm sorry, I keep saying stepbrother, half-brother, "is merry with wine. And when I say unto you, smite Amnon, then kill him. Fear not, have not I commanded you? Be courageous and be valiant." And the servants of Absalom did unto Amnon as Absalom had commanded. Then all the king's sons rose, and every man got him up onto his mule and fled. It came to pass while they were in the way, that tidings came to David, saying, "Absalom hath slain all the king's sons, and there is not one of them left." Is that true? That's right, it's not true. Then the king arose. Now the king, you've got to understand, if you get news like this that all of your kids have been killed, all your sons have been killed by one of the others, I mean, how would you take that news? Can you imagine how he felt? The despair? I mean, really, I think, why wouldn't he believe it? He's already feeling guilty for his own sin. He's probably going to see this as God's hand in what's going on in his life. And so what he does, how he reacts, is he tears his garments and lays on the earth, and all of his servants stand by with their clothes torn too, because this is a practice of mourning back in the day. And then we have a familiar name here, Jonadab. Remember Jonadab? Remember who he was? Anybody? What do we know about Jonadab just in a couple chapters ago, or a chapter ago?
Relationship to Bathsheba?
Jonadab, let's go back to chapter.
He was the guy that gave Absalom bad advice and said how to take advantage of Tamar and said, "Here's how to do it."
Yep. Jonadab is the man who came up with this scheme for Amnon on how to have incest with his sister. Jonadab is David's nephew. He is the son of, is it Shimei?
Verse 3 of chapter 13.
Shimei? Yeah. 2 Samuel 13, verse 3. Amnon had a friend whose name was Jonadab, the son of Shimeah, David's brother. Of course, in the same chapter, isn't it? And he said, and it says, notice this, Jonadab was a very subtle man. This word subtle is going to get used again. We're going to see it again. But it means, I'm just looking up, the Hebrew word is chacham. It's spelled looks like C-H-A-K-A-M. It means cunning. Intelligent, skillful, cunning. Can also mean wise. So we have this cunning person now who was the one who came up with the scheme for Amnon, who was party to it, joining in the news here, the news report, to David about what's going on. Verse 32, and Jonadab, the son of Shimeah, David's brother, answered and said, let not my lord suppose that they have slain all the young men, the king's sons, for Amnon only is dead. And notice what he says next. For by the appointment of Absalom, this hath been determined from the day that he forced his sister Tamar. So, he's also giving the reason why Absalom did this, isn't he? Which means that he, of course, is admitting that he knew about it, right? And the thing about it is, he's basically saying, I had knowledge of this whole plot to begin with, and yet I didn't tell David. I didn't tell David about it. I don't understand why David just didn't have him killed. Because he knows about this plot. Had he known this, remember David was reticent to send Amnon to the sheep shearing. Remember that? Well, there's good reason why that, I think he suspected that that there was tension among them, and that little bit of information would have been helpful. But y'all are looking at me like, I'm from Mars or something. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, that makes sense. But I think sometimes when we look at it from the perspective of what we feel could be. Did Jonadab know that that's exactly what at that time Amnon was going to do? Now, I think probably the whole kingdom was appraised of.
Are you talking about the incest?
About the incest, right.
Did Jonadab know that? Well, he's the one that came up with the plot.
Well, we came up with the plot, but for them to come together sexually, was that part of the plot?
I don't see how you could read it any other way.
Yeah.
I mean, he basically, Amnon basically tells him, how he feels towards his sister. In verse 4, he says, hey, what's wrong with you? You seem soul sick, basically. In verse 4, you lean from day to day. Wilt thou not tell me? And Amnon said, I love Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister. I love her.
Right.
So he's revealing what he wants. And so Jonadab says, okay, well then lay down on the bed and make yourself sick. When your father comes, make up this story. So he's basically using deception. He's the purveyor of a deceptive plan, a plot, which interestingly enough is exactly what David had done. So all the stuff that David has done is being replayed right back into his own life as bad seed being planted. And so Amnon does this and carries out this plan. The whole thing is, it appears to me at least, to be the plot created by Jonadab. That's my take on it.
Yeah.
So you don't see it that way?
Well, I'm on the take unless we absolutely know. and to love a person who, you know, I think that David tried to raise his children right and wrong, and there was a receptivity of what was right. I guess I would always lean on the side that, you know, in innocence, he called, maybe just wanted to see her, or things like this, and you may, I'm not saying you're wrong in that area, but I'm saying that it may have been just, you know, his desire to see, get to know her, or whatever, and that just took place.
You're giving him a huge benefit of the doubt there. I'm not really alive.
Hey, can we look at verse 13?
Because you're right, why did he slay Jonadab, as far as that is concerned? Why didn't he slay him? If he concocted this plan and the burden lied upon him, why didn't he just slay him?
I said,
So interesting perspective.
David's so out of touch.
I'm open to.
I don't think David is spiritually aware. He's so out of touch. He's just, he's already done one wrong thing. This is another in a series of not doing the right thing.
Right.
Could they have been legally married legitimately according to God in verse 13?
Not by the law.
Because he's, you know, Tamar says the king will let us be
I think
together.
that was a ruse to get out.
So
That's my take on it.
So technically they couldn't really be
They
married.
couldn't by the law.
Because they were different families in a way, different mothers.
Right, but even that, the law forbade.
Okay, all right, thanks.
You know, the thing about it, as it says earlier, Jonadab was a very cunning, deceitful person. And it's very possible that one, he hid this from David. David didn't know that he had been the instigator of the plan to get Tamar and Amnon together. But the thing that's striking me strange is David had to not have his mind on focus, because God had told him that the sword shall not depart from the house. And so you would have thought that anything that looked a little suspicious, that would have thought would have come back to his mind. And he would have done something, but he wasn't focused on that. And at the time, but he should remember, when God speaks, he means it.
He's just a weak leader right now.
So now we get so let's just, for the fun of it, let's just say that pastor is going to be the one who's going to, in this room, and we can always give people the benefit of the doubt unless there's absolute 100% evidence that that person's wrong, which I respect, okay? Because we're going to have the same essential problem here with Joab, okay? And I'm not going to be very merciful to Joab either, so you can take the other side of that. Okay?
No, I believe that he should have been gotten at the very beginning. That's a hard one for me to understand. But we know this, that David at the very end, you know, before he passes the baton to Solomon to be king, okay, says there are several guys you have to look after. And one is Joab. And so he kept that tucked in the back of his mind all that time. So I think that, matter of fact, I think that he should have been taken care of as soon as he killed, who was it?
The other two, the two brothers, Fred.
Yeah, it says in 13:2, and Amnon was so vexed that he fell sick for his sister Tamar, for she was a virgin. Amnon thought it was hard for him to do anything to her. So it sounds like that he had bad motives early on to me. And Amnon said unto her in verse 4, I love Tamar, but yet after the sex act, he kicks her out. So that's, is that lust or love? That's kind of that reminds me of Hollywood love, one and done.
Right.
I think it's interesting here in verse 32 where we were, that Jonadab is the one that tells David about his friend being killed. Amnon was killed, but Amnon had a friend whose name was in verse 3. And so it's Jonadab is kind of telling David,
Turned
he's telling David, my friend friend has been killed, and Absalom is the one that did it. So.
I see what you're saying, yeah. So if I take what you mean by that is he has a little, has it in for Absalom.
That has an influence, Absalom, yeah.
That's very, very possible. Do you understand what he's saying?
Yeah, say that again, then summarize what you just said.
Well, he's saying basically that by I'm going to use this term, ratting on Absalom. This was apparently Jonadab and Amnon were pretty close. Okay, and so this Absalom, who has killed his friend, right? He's a relative. He's actually a relative, a close relative, right? He's upset about. Apparently, I mean, he's got his cunningness and subtlety seems to be a way for him to get back here. That would be an opportunity here, because technically, then David should kill him. And so maybe that may be what. I mean, I'm always interested in what motivates people to do what they do. So that's a good point.
I think one other thing that Jonadab didn't count on was the strength of David's love for his son Absalom.
Right.
Because, we know that later on what happened with the whole deal, and get up our but David loved Absalom, and in the end, when Absalom was found slain, he just mourned his son, says, Absalom, my son Absalom. And so, regardless, I think in the end, Jonadab, like the pastor said, before he passed the kingship over to Solomon, he told him about it because he knew by that time what now.
And listen, if you guys disagree with me about it, please don't be afraid to. That's why we're here. Okay? If I'm off,
We'll all understand when we get there.
if I'm off track, I mean, there are things that sometimes I form an opinion, and it may be, for lack of other input. So this is valuable to know. So now what's going to happen is Absalom very naturally is going to be in trouble. So he's going to flee. So in verse 34, Absalom fled. And the young man that kept the watch lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, there came much people by the way of the hillside behind him. And Jonadab said unto the king, Behold, the king's sons come, as the servant said, so it is. So basically, now the sons are all coming and appearing before David, and now you can see they weren't actually killed after all but Amnon. And so Jonadab says, see, here they are. And it came to pass as soon as he had made an end of speaking, that behold, the king's sons came, lifted up their voice, and wept. They're all weeping because their brothers had been killed. The king also and all of his servants wept very sore. But Absalom fled and went to Talmai, the son of Ammihud, how do you say that? King of Jeshurun. This is where his mother is from, this Jeshurun area. And so David mourned for his son every day. Bob was saying. David did have a deep love for his son. Now, and the third time it says, so Absalom fled and went to Jeshurun, and was there 3 years. And the soul of King David longed to go forth unto Absalom, for he was comforted concerning Amnon, seeing he was dead. This is a very, very complex, dynamic here. David is king. The law requires Absalom's death, but he's a father, and he loves his son, and he understands probably even Absalom's sense of revenge against Amnon, and technically it should have been a duty that he should have carried out, being the leader. And so in his mind, it seems to me there's this sort of vindication that occurred not by his own hand, and so he's not really set and opposed against Absalom at this point. Okay? for having done what he technically should have done himself, at least in my way of thinking about it. Bob?
It's hard for me to understand verse 36 where it says, "Behold, the king's sons came and lifted up their voice and wept." I mean, they had been there when Absalom told the servants to kill Amnon, and they could have stopped it.
Well, I think they were all drinking a lot, and I think this happened out of their, I don't think they would, I don't think they were in on it. I think that this.
No, I didn't say, I said, but they come in and leave like, this great tragedy, which it was, but it's like, look, you're president. If I'd been a king myself, I think, why didn't you stop it?
I don't think they knew. I think it was very off to the side somewhere. I really think that they just weren't even aware of it. Fred?
Would we say that David's reluctance to faithfully judge his son Absalom suggests the principle that there are situations where we should recuse ourselves?
So that's an interesting point. He did recuse himself, didn't he? In effect.
And nobody replaced
He
it.
didn't,
Well,
but he didn't make an appointment.
Anyone.
Right, right. I'm not sure who he would have. I mean, he's the king.
Whoever
Yeah.
he wanted.
I mean, he can delegate the capital punishment to anybody anyway. So, did that result
But it
in this
did.
thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm here again. This is just my perspective. I think that the reason it would be easier to do this actually, this was an activity of great joy. It was a celebration. And so there was feasting. There was typically there was dancing. And so this was a particular activity where everybody was just thinking, they were relaxed. Basically, you come to this environment, you're completely relaxed, you're going to enjoy yourself, you're looking forward to these special times which you can get together like this.
Right.
And so I think that it was a perfect setting for him. And here again, you call it naivety because of the fact that David allowed, even when he asked, can Amnon come?
Now, I may be pressing a point here, making this point, but you have to understand that Amnon also has a little bit of responsibility here for getting himself inebriated enough to where he couldn't have, accomplished what they wanted to. If somebody wants to kill you bad enough, they're going to find a way to do it. But the fact that alcohol was the tool by which they were going to make this happen tells me that David is also repaying, or being repaid here in his attempt to use alcohol to get Uriah to go in with his wife as a tool. This is another ripple or wave of the chastisement that comes back on him in how this whole. There's about 5 different things that are common denominators in what David did in his sin with Bathsheba that is completely echoed back in the way this happens. And so that's one of them is the use of alcohol, the use of deputizing someone else to carry out a duty. That's what Absalom did. He deputized, in effect, a couple servants to carry out the murder. So it's just interesting how closely parallel David's sin is being replicated here back in how this happens. Just for what that's worth.
So Chuck, I just wonder for us, if we could have gone back to the beginning of this river where the water came down to begin with, which is that David could have just been more sober and visualized future consequences, and instead of just thinking about the immediate, all of these other things would have not happened. And so when we're tempted, I don't know how we can remind ourselves, hey, right now I don't feel like there are any consequences. Could never fathom what might happen, but somehow we need something to tell us, well, you don't know, but there's things that are gonna happen, and so you should say no, just say no now.
Yeah. There's a part of this that you have to almost say, well, no matter what he did, no matter how vigilant David could have been, God's justice system still cannot be thwarted.
I'm talking about the sheep.
Yeah.
You know, when he had the adultery, if he didn't have, if somehow he could have had victory and said no to sin,
Yeah.
then all of this
Yeah,
watershed would have happened.
yeah, absolutely.
So talk about identical judgment. And that is, here, David had Joab, his servant, killed Uriah.
Right.
And now Absalom had his
That's
servants
right. That's exactly right.
killed. Amnon. Actually, it wasn't by his hand in particular, it was by his command.
Right.
So, exact judgment is
Yeah.
what you sow, you reap.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good.
Be sure your sins will find it out.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
Yeah, you know, once again, we see here that alcohol prompts a bad decision. Can you think of the Bible instances where someone drank and then made a better decision than they would have before without it?
No, I can't.
And the thing about it is, rather than just talking about it, is because of the somewhat legalization, one of the biggest investments, so to speak, today is in the marijuana industry, which is dulling the senses and things like this too. Anything that can bring our minds out of control, and that be not one of the final words that says, but be filled with the Holy Spirit. Don't be controlled by any foreign substance. Be controlled by the Spirit of God. The Spirit of God always will lead you to sensible things. But whereas wine, drink, strong drink, marijuana leads to you being out of control of your senses.
Yes, just like sometimes people say, yes, I can have a drink or two and drive better than I could before.
I'm not as anxious.
It's
More relaxed.
just not true. You know, anytime that you drink, you think you got it, and you ain't got it.
Yeah.
Does common sense offend people today?
I think so. Certainly fits their agenda. Wow.
I think so. Sometimes, in some of these instances where like David and Absalom and so forth, they were probably guilty of the same thing that you and I are at times. When there's something and you forget sometimes in your mind that God is always watching. He always sees. He's always there. You can't do anything, you know, you may hide it from man, but you won't hide it from God.
Amen.
So I think that, you know, particularly like David, he saw that ship, he thought, well, all the men are out the water, there's nobody, you know, who's going to know? But God knew.
Yeah.
And
Well, David looks from a love perspective, true love perspective, and that is, love beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. Love thinketh no evil. And so, it's not mere naivety when you do have love, biblical love, then you until something is absolutely proven, you have a tendency to lean toward the trust side.
Look on the right side.
You know, talk about driving, it's like Absalom did road rage. He took things into his own hand. He didn't. He said, "This is wrong, and nobody else is fixing it. I got to fix it." So he.
Well, that's why I give you the comment you made in the last Bible study about the fact that as far as this total situation is concerned, Absalom said to Tamar, now just wait and see. And he was waiting for the king's judgment or reaction to the situation. And the way it should have been handled was probably that son should have been slain himself. And that's when it wasn't taken in, you know, the situation wasn't handled properly by David. And Absalom said, I'm going to take care of myself. And we do that a lot of times too.
This is an interesting situation. ask this question, I don't know if there is an answer, but it's a reality, okay? We can be critical of David for not carrying out the capital punishment. And I can be tempted to ask, I certainly thought it when you said he was about love, I was thinking, well, was he loving enough to carry out justice, okay? But then, I think about God. I think about our God, who
Mercy.
is a God of justice, and yet he comes up with a plan to have mercy. And in that sense, the same consternation, if you will, is being struggled with when you love someone and you want to find a way to rescue them from their own stupidity.
Wonder if David
You
was,
show restraint with patience.
I think David was thinking about how God had mercy on him, because David should have died when he.
Right. That
He
plays in
He
too.
should have died. He said, I will show mercy.
Yeah.
Now here, who am I now to?
Yeah.
Maybe God will show mercy on this person.
Yeah.
And also, David, he really couldn't forget all that stuff he had did. And it was kind of like his hands was tied, at first when Samuel came to David and told him about what this traveler had did, and David got all angry and upset, said he should die.
But you found Nathan?
Yeah, Nathan, right? And then he knew that such a person should die, but then when his son did this thing, he spared him because he was spared. So it was kind of like he was in an awkward situation, where he couldn't operate right.
We've got about 5 minutes left. Let me start to introduce the next chapter, okay? And then what I'd like you to do is read it, for next week, because so that I don't have to next week spend all my time just reading it, because it'll take a while to do it. Just familiarize yourself with the situation. But let me set it up for you, okay?
Is this chapter 14?
Yeah, so chapter 14. David, as you know, is 3 years are going to go by, and while Absalom is in Jeshurun. And so when we go into chapter 14, Joab, the son of Zeruiah, now Joab is the general of the army, okay, and Joab, remember, is the person who has killed two of David's, I guess they were nephews, I believe. They were, if I'm not mistaken, they were both nephews, or they're certainly in the family of David. He has killed two of them. And so he's not a man that doesn't have a little bit of, let me just put it this way. I believe other of David's children had animosity towards Joab. I think it would be natural that they would have that. And so I think that Joab is in a position, I'm surmising a little bit here, that Joab is very interested in his political future. Because now, Absalom is probably the next one in line. Now, that sounds odd to say when it's going to turn out Joab is the one who's going to kill Absalom. But I think, in my opinion, Joab is playing things by what is in front of him right now. I don't really think he has any particular loyalty to Absalom. I think what he's looking out for is if Absalom comes into power, I need to be on his good side. Now, let me tell you why I believe that. The text is going to tell us that the people very much like Absalom. They're drawn to him, partly because of his looks, but we're going to see that Absalom is actually going to go out and try to win the people over. He's going to do things to win their favor. So Absalom certainly has an agenda, he has political aspirations. There's no question about that. I don't think Joab is naive about that at all. I don't think that Joab is, you know, if a person has that kind of aptitude already when they're young, you can see it. It's not going to be like hidden. And so I think Joab is astute enough to know that if he's going to have success as the continued general of the army of Israel, he's going to have to give me one other reason why he would concoct this crazy ruse he's getting ready to do to get Absalom back into the kingdom. What would be his motivation? Can anybody think of any other motivation he would do that? Why does he care so much about Absalom when there are other children? What do you think, Pastor? You got an opinion?
I think he wasn't as concerned about Absalom. Joab wasn't. I think he was more concerned about David. Joab.
What good? My question would be, what good does it do David to bring Absalom back into Jerusalem?
Yeah, well, we don't know the story. It was probably one of the most foolish moves, but that he made. It was, you know, also here again, and we see permeating this, that he loved that son. That son must have been Winston. Number one, he was handsome, well-statured. He was just kind of a knockdown person, and he had a super personality because he won the hearts of the people. And it probably had won not just David's heart, Joab's, but others. But he was an individual who had what you call a magnetic personality. Right. And so I think that here again, giving Joab a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, he was concerned for the king to bring the son back. And I'm not saying that isn't a part of it too, because Joab is an interesting character. There are times where he disdained the commandment of David to number the people because God's word said it. He disdained it, so eventually he didn't really fulfill that task. And then God judged Israel so heavily for the counting of the people, which God says don't count because you're going to trust in yourself.
So what's going to happen here is Joab is going to create basically a deceptive story. He's going to use a woman who is from the southern towns just south of Jerusalem, same town Amos comes from. She's not, to my way of thinking, a particularly good character because she's basically fabricating an entire lie. This isn't a parable. This is not in the same vein as what Nathan did. Nathan came and told, in a sense, a parable, a story, okay? She comes and claims this is her kids. If I'm not mistaken, let's look at the story just for a minute. Joab, the son of Zeruiah, okay, so Joab sent to Tekoa, that's a town, south of Jerusalem, and fetched thence a wise woman. This word wise is the exact same Hebrew word that was used for Jonadab. So that settled. It's the same word, the same Hebrew word. Okay, just so you know, for what it's worth. Okay, and said unto her, I pray thee, feign thyself to be a mourner, put on now mourning apparel, anoint not thyself with oil, but be as a woman that had a long time mourned for the dead. And come to the king and speak on this manner unto him. So Joab put the words in her mouth. And you could argue, well, why would she do this? Well, he's the general, so she's got to do it. You could say she was coerced. She does do a pretty good act here, I will say. When the woman of Tekoa spake to the king, she fell on her face, did obeisance, and said, Help, O king. The king said unto her, What aileth thee? And she said, I am indeed a widow woman, and mine husband is dead. And thy handmaid had 2 sons. And they strove together in the field. There was none to part them. But the one smote the other and slew him. And behold, the whole family is risen against thine handmaid, and said, Deliver him that smote his brother, that we may kill him for the life of his brother whom he slew. And he will, for the life of his brother, they want vengeance. And he will destroy the heir also. And so they shall quench my coal, which is left. That means to take the last of my sons. I won't have any, there will be no continuation of my generation, quenching the coal, that's the idea there. And shall not leave to my husband neither name nor remainder upon the earth. And the king said to the woman, go to thine house, and I will give charge concerning thee. Well, she's not done. She's like, that's not good enough, because she's got an agenda here. And so she goes on and she continues the problem. My Lord, O king, the iniquity be on me and on my father's house, and the king and his throne be guilty. She's basically saying, she's trying to basically say, look, this is our family's issue. This is not yours. I don't want to put you through any trouble at all. She's coming across in this very genuine sort of way to basically get him in a position, and she's going to praise him. And as you read through it for next week, just notice how she crafts the story to get him to say what she wants him to say. She locks him in on his words, and then basically when she finally reveals, he finally figures out, look, I know what this is all about. This is Joab. Joab has been, apparently in my way of thinking, after me to get Absalom back in, and this is his doing. I see his hand all over him. Okay, he sees that, asks her about it, and she's like, yep, that's pretty much it.
That was that discerning spirit.
So that's what we're talking about here.
That was that discerning spirit.
Yes.
David was wise still because God had his hands on him, just like Solomon. These was wise men, spiritually wise. So, and just like to say, he found out what she was up to by listening to her. So you just can't fool God's people.
Now this could seem tedious to some of you if you're tempted to think, wow, what are we supposed to make of all this? I'm not sure. That's why I'm reading it, okay? That's why I'm trying to study it, to understand what are we supposed to learn from these things? And that's the question you ought to be asking yourself. If you have ideas about that, that's what I want you to contribute this week, Fred.
Yeah, what stands out to me is prayer. It is so difficult for political leaders and statesmen to make all the decisions right. We need to really be praying for wisdom, for courage, for faith to stand up, and especially, in dealing with people that are close to them.
Yeah.
And it's hard for all of us to deal rightly with those that we love and give them the discipline they need.
Resist the devil and he will flee from you. Just say no to sin.
All right. Anybody else? Otherwise, we'll have a song. And after the end.
Let's sing the first verse of Victory in Jesus. It's a book. It's on page 812, very back of the book after the end. Victory in Jesus, the first verse.
I know that.